Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Wolf United. This is the preview for Atalanta. We've had a few days to digest the miserable display at the weekend, but hopefully we can start a new week off well and get a positive win. And we absolutely need it. He needs it. The team needs it. We're going to be discussing about what we're expecting for the next game, what kind of faces and what changes might be seen. And we'll see you on the other side.
Click subscribe to get daily Manchester United content from Passionate Reds, only on All for United.
Welcome back, everybody. Fred, good to have you on again, matey. Stu and Callum, as always. So, big test. Wednesday night, Atalanta. Are we home or away?
We're at home.
Old Trafford, yeah, of course we are.
I have no idea.
Big game, isn't it? I mean, obviously we got a win in the last game. Needed. We need to get 12 points really, and obviously big changes, big differences from the weekend. So what does Ollie do? Do you think he makes wholesale changes, Stu, or do you think he's just going to make one or two?
Yeah, you see, I'm one of those who would shove that shower of shit back out on Wednesday and make them sort themselves out. But unfortunately, you can't because there's too much resting on the game. And the problem with Atalanta is they are a strong outfit and really strong. I mean, they're absolutely brilliant in the air. And we're weak in the air. They're very, very good in the air.
Well, put it this way, right? That was probably our worst defensive display for a very long time. Without Varane, Maguire's not 100% as we saw at the weekend, and they're scoring goals left, right, and centre, and they look attacking. We're going to really struggle with that. Yeah,
there's an argument to play buying Lindelof. There really is, because I just don't think Maguire's fit. He didn't look fit. He's going to want to play. He's going to have a couple of days extra training. I would hope Ollie dragged him in today. He drags them in tomorrow, and he drags them in Tuesday as well. I hope he goes to town on them, because, as I said in the Cup, they've got a lot of problems, personally and mentally, these players, and they've got to fucking sort themselves out, and they've got to do it quickly. So, but Atalanta, you're absolutely right. Their creation levels are exceptionally high. Fred will know that I don't do stats. Stats are a waste of time, because you can say that somebody's done 6 tackles, but it only takes a second to fuck up in football. And that 1 second could be critical to the game's balance. So stats don't do it for me. It's your overall performance during the game. What we've got to do, and people don't like the fact that we start off slow, but sometimes in football, you've got to start off slow but assured. You have to get an assured footing in the first 10 or 15 minutes and gradually play yourself in. Now, Atalanta would have looked at that, would have looked at our past results, and they'd be absolutely buzzing when they come to us. They're going to come for us. They're going to try and strangle us, and we've got to be prepared for that. And there are times in a game of football where you've got to put the foot on the ball and just do the simple stuff, the 2, the 3 yard passing, and get yourself up the pitch. I can't see Atalanta coming in and sitting deep. I could be wrong, but I can't see it. I don't think that's in their mentality or their makeup. I've got a feeling we're in for a very similar night as we were when we played Villarreal. What I'd say to the fans is, you've got, football lasts 95 minutes. It doesn't last 45 minutes. And if we go goal down, don't get on everybody's back. Start believing, and you've got to start supporting the team. These players, whoever he picks. And I'm a bit torn on the side, if I'm being honest. I don't know what the other lads will think, so it'd be interesting to see what the lads think about their teams. But I'm a bit torn on the side. And I know I'm a big Donny fan, but I think it's a game for Donny. I think it's a game to drop Pogba. I think it's a game to bring Donny in. And I think that'll bring the best out of Bruno. It's who you hold. It's who you choose to hold. Do you choose Matic again? But as Cal says, we've got 60 minutes in his legs. I think Matic is too slow and too pedestrian to play against Atalanta. I think we'll need Fred in there personally. I don't particularly like saying it, but I do. And I think Donny and Bruno. And if Bruno can come back and fill that 10-yard gap I was talking about in the previous show in Cup, we could be more dangerous. But and then obviously you have I would go with Cavani up top, actually, if I'm being truthful with you. I'll go with Cavani because he's...
There's some big questions actually, isn't it? And this is the
Yeah.
problem with Ronaldo. Immediately after not starting him against Everton, Ferguson came out and said you all start with your best players. Ronaldo, there was talks about him being stroppy. But I you know what? I think this is going to be a game where you do drop players like Pogba and Ronaldo. And I think that Cavani needs to start. I think maybe you need to see a bit more of, if Rashford is fit enough again, him, Sancho and Greenwood,
or Jesse,
have that interchange.
Or give Jesse a go. You've got to do something.
Yeah.
I mean, I talk from what I see, about the game and how I view the game, and common sense is a huge thing for me. It's massive. It's absolutely massive, because when you're on that pitch, it's down to you to do, to create. It's down to you to make things happen, and you've got to have that will. You've got to apply. You've got to have aptitude, and you've just got to push, and we need to push. But I would start off relatively sedate on Wednesday and play myself into the game. That's what I'd be telling the players if I was on that pitch.
Yeah, good points there, mate. Cal, with that in mind, would you rest Maguire and have Bailly and Jones? Not Jones, bloody hell, Carthick would love me. Bailly and Lindelof. I still feel that's what should have happened, and obviously it's easy for us to say that now when Maguire playing so poor, but I really expected Bailly and Lindelof, and I think that's what he's going to have to go with on Wednesday, personally.
Yeah, I'd go with Lindelof and Bailly. I wouldn't rest Maguire, though. I think that's the wrong word. I'd have dropped Maguire. His performance against Leicester was just so poor. It was reminiscent of when, at the start of last season, when he just had his issues in Greece. He needs to be dropped, I'm afraid. He needs to be shown that performance isn't acceptable. It's as simple as that.
But do you think, I get where you're coming from, and you're absolutely right, but do you think one game is enough to warrant that? Do you think that really he was thrown into the team probably a bit early? He's declared himself fit, and actually he's not. Can you put? I mean, I think back to days. Peter Schmeichel, he was injured. I think it was back in 95, 96. Played in goal against Spurs. Declared himself fit, and he had an absolutely abysmal game. We lost 4-1, and Fergie said that was my fault for putting him in. That was my fault for listening and not really doing thorough checks.
Well, yeah, I mean, if he's not fit, fine, but that decision will be on Ollie to decide that. If he didn't think he was fit enough to do a job, then he wouldn't have picked him. Ultimately, it was a mistake in the end. But, yeah, one game is enough. We're at Man United, and when you're the captain of the club as well, you need to lead by example, and that performance isn't something that the younger players should be looking at and going, that's how I should be playing. Ultimately, look, I like Maguire, and he's a brilliant defender, and he's a very consistent defender. But his performance against Leicester was reminiscent of just a genuine amateur player playing. It was like he'd won a competition to play at centre-back for Man United. It wasn't good enough. And if he wasn't fit, then I'm afraid an extra 3 days difference or two days training isn't going to do much anyway. So if he wasn't fit for Saturday, he's probably not going to be that much fitter for Wednesday. So
yeah, totally agree.
I would drop him. Yeah, I think the only worry that I had was I wonder if Ollie just didn't trust Bailly. But Bailly's always famously done well against Jamie Vardy. So as soon as I actually didn't even see the team sheet properly. I just assumed Bailly was playing until I started watching it and seeing Maguire was on. So I'd drop Maguire. He clearly isn't ready to come back in. If he's not fit enough, fine. But I still don't think it warrants how bad he was against Leicester.
Yeah, and just to quickly talk about the wing backs, actually, Luke and Aaron. Aaron's obviously now in contention for this game with his ban being uplifted a little. So yeah, Fred, would you continue with Aaron Wan-Bissaka? Do you think Dalot should maybe have another shout again? I thought Aaron Wan-Bissaka wasn't particularly good. I did see some stats the day, and he created absolutely nothing. Hasn't got any assists this season in comparison to Trent, who's had, I think, 4 assists, 7 big chances created, and all this. Do you know what I mean? I'm just trying to give you a few stats, but listen, Telles, Dalot, Luke, or Aaron, what would you go with?
I think it's a huge bonus that Wan-Bissaka's appeal has been won, because Dallow's not convinced me. I think he had a very poor game against Villarreal. Defensively, he's very abject, very poor. Atalanta are serious players. They were top scorers in Serie A last year. They finished third behind Inter and AC. They actually play a very similar system to how Leicester play. They play 3-4-1-2 or 5 at the back, and their wing backs are one of their main sources of attacks. So I think Wan-Bissaka is a must. And I would actually, I agree with Callum. I would drop Maguire for performance and fitness. He's just not match fit. He may be physically fit, but he's not match fit. He looks very. He wasn't sharp at all. His mind was a few seconds behind the attackers. And I would also drop Shaw. I think both of them have got a hangover from the summer. They didn't have much of a preseason last summer. Then they played all of last season. They've not had a preseason. Oh, they've had the Euros this summer. They've had a minimal preseason. So they've just not had a rest. And it's not just a physical thing. It's a mental thing. So I think Tellez played okay against Villarreal. Obviously, he scored a great volley. So I would have actually kept him in the starting lineup in the league after that, personally. But yeah, I'd Tellez definitely. Drop Maguire. I think Bailly should have started as well over the weekend. It just shows that Ollie doesn't trust him. Unfortunately, if he's opting for a half fit Maguire over Bailly, he's just signed a new contract. It doesn't bode very well. So it's difficult. It's a difficult one. I don't expect there to be wholesale changes across the team because we know how that usually plans out. But there's got to be some changes. There's got to be some tweaks. We can't have the same as we experienced against Leicester over the weekend. I think Ronaldo's going to start. He's going to start every Champions League game. But the likes of Donny, even Lingard shows a bit more momentum, energy in the middle of the park. We're going to need that because Atalanta's attack is their biggest strength. They're very dynamic. They like to interchange. They've got a very good manager in Gasperini. They're very fast up top as well. So that's another reason possibly to start Bailly. And they generally they interchange, so they're good at creating overloads on certain sides. So Aaron Wan-Bissaka definitely for that case, and definitely a bit more energy in the middle of the park in Lingard and definitely Fred as well.
Yeah, I do agree. We'll come to the midfield in a minute, actually, but I think you're absolutely right. I think Tellez probably. I think Luke doesn't need dropping because we're turning on him quickly or anything, but he's just not looking on the pace in the minute. And I think Tellez definitely deserves it.
There's something to add about Shaw though, Mark and Fred, and that is the re-emergence of Rashford after his injury. When you look at the connection between Rashford and Shaw's a lot more assured when Rashford's playing. And I think that a couple of games you'll see Shaw.
And you know what? As crazy as it sounds, I felt that even when Rashford came on, there was a little bit more of energy from that left-hand side, including Shaw.
A lot more.
Wasn't a lot. I know we were shit in the second half, but we did have a little bit more from Shaw, and I think that was quite visible straight away for the first 5 minutes at least.
Yeah, it was. I think one of the things he might have to do is maybe take Sancho out of the equation again. And, as you guys said, maybe bring in Lingard. But, Ollie's, if you believe everything, Ollie's balls aren't to the wall. But he's got to be brave over the next. He's got to be brave Wednesday. He's got to be brave Wednesday. He can revert to McFred against Liverpool, which we'll talk about later on in the week, I'd imagine. But I think on Wednesday he's got to be brave because they do have a tendency to make errors. Atalanta do. They have a tendency to make a lot of errors in the middle of the park. And I think if we can exploit that with somebody like Donny, I think Donny would be better at exploiting it because if he wins it, he can do something with it, and he can start our flow, which is what we need, and it will just unleash Fernandes again. And Callum was right. I think he created 4 or 5 good chances on Sunday, but he still wasn't great. Nobody was anyway, but he still wasn't great. And he's going through the motions, Bruno is at the minute, and we need to take him out of this going through the motions thing. We're not playing to his strengths. and we're not playing to the front three strengths. I've said before, it requires a focal point, and it doesn't require 3 behind that focal point. It requires 2 behind that focal point. Whoever it is, a combination of Greenwood and Sancho, Greenwood and Rashford. It doesn't matter. It just requires 2, and that will free up Fernandes a lot more.
Yeah, good points. Good points, well made. Obviously, on that as well, you mentioned Atalanta make mistakes in the middle of the park, and it probably will be a war of the midfield. Obviously, we've not been too happy with our midfield. So with that in mind, Cal, who would you start in the midfield? Obviously, I think Donny would be a really good opportunity for him. I think Pogba probably will get dropped. You might probably still see Bruno, even maybe see Lingard in that number 10. But who would you start as the number 6 in that 2?
I hate to say it, but it's probably going to be McTominay and Fred. They'll probably start.
You think both will start, or just the
both,
one?
I think both will start. I think he'll go to his tried and trusted. Tried and trusted for whatever reason, I don't know, but I think that's what he'll go with. He'll play Bruno in front of them. Whether he'll play Pogba on the left, I don't know. Personally, I think I have a funny feeling he might drop Pogba as well. Not in terms of how bad he was against Leicester. I just think he might do. I think he might go with something a bit different. He might probably start with Sancho again on the or he'll bring Rashford back and put Sancho over to the right, which is where I think he's best, to be honest. I think he'll just go with what he likes to go with, and he'll just go for the 3 of McTominay and Fred with Bruno in front of them.
Got a question for you, Cal. Got a question for you about Sancho, because obviously when you were raving about Sancho when we first joined the channel, I had reservations, didn't I? If you remember.
Yeah.
Do you think he's better on the left or the right? Because I'm always confused, because he did a lot of his best work. I felt, could be wrong here, I felt he did his best work in Dortmund on the left.
He did.
Yeah, he did, but the problem is we signed him to be the solution to our right side, and he is just as good on the right. It's just that he did have very good games on the left as well.
Yeah, I think essentially, sorry to interrupt, Cal, I think essentially he's good both on the left and the right hand side. He played in both positions for Dortmund for a number of years and provided great numbers. But I think people look into the XG and the numbers too much, where he did provide a lot more on that left-hand side. But essentially, he can play on the right or the left. It doesn't matter. And the thing is, if you look at United teams in the past, we've always had sort of 4 or 5 players that can interchange into 3 or 2 of those positions back in the day, I suppose, right? And I think right-hand side is where he will be looking to play more often than not.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I'm very much of that mindset like you, Stu. Stats mean nothing. It's the XG thing and the assists. Like,
Yeah,
I
totally
get it
agree.
to an extent. You can kind of use it to base some kind of knowledge around the game, but the problem is it can be a misguided and misconstrued part of it as well. If you even look at like assists, if I laid it off to you, Stu, on the halfway line, and then you go take on 6 players and then score, technically I gave you the assist.
Yeah, that's right.
You that made that goal. So I'm always a little bit blindsided by the whole assist thing, to be honest, and goal involvement. The goal involvement to me should be how many goals you score, not how many you make per se. Sometimes obviously they make it, like the crossing in, or like a really, really good cut through pass into Ronaldo, for example, or whatever. But it can be a little bit misconstrued, I think, sometimes. And Sancho hasn't been bad for us. He's just not scored or assisted yet. And because there's such an obsession with goals and assists and XG and even XA now, it can sort of blindly make people
it convolutes things
very well.
It?
And then by that happening, it then leads to a player's confidence dropping because they then believe the hype or believe that they're not doing well.
You know what? I
Actually...
don't disagree with stats per se. I think what's happened is over the last few years, stats have become very complex, and they give people too much of a right to be able to go with the narrative from it. I think that obviously assists, I totally get your point there. If you pass to someone in midfield and they take on 6 players, it doesn't really mean much. But I think when it comes to simpler things like shots on target and shots, that means a hell of a lot more, right? Because you're able to get to the final third and make those contributions.
Yeah, it does. And just going back onto Sancho then, Carl, I guess what I was getting at is I think he's playing quite safe. You're right about no goals, no assists, and I think he's playing quite safe. And I think he needs to get out of that safe mindset now. He's been with the club and the Premier League now long enough to remove that safety net from around him, that cloak of safety that he feels he needs to play with. He needs to take that off, say, fuck it, get his head down and do what he does best.
I think you're starting to see glimpses of him doing that, though.
Glimpses, yeah. But you raved about him. Do you remember?
Yeah.
We had a conversation, mate. You raved about him. And you did say to me, and you were right, Stu, not seeing him play. And I was right, and I admitted it. I hadn't seen him play at that particular time. Or when I had, he hadn't played particularly well. But I saw him in the second half of the season, if you remember. And I'm like, wow. Yeah, now I can see
the
it.
problem with that conversations we had was at the time he wasn't playing great. Genuinely, like, forget the goals and assists, he wasn't playing well. I think that the problem that he had was obviously the link with United started originally a couple of years ago. I think it turns his head, and he wasn't good for Dortmund. But you're probably right. He's playing a little bit safe. He's not taking the risk or making the right decision. But I think you are starting to see glimpses of it. And
I think he's been really unfortunate actually last few games. I think actually at times against Leicester in the first half, he looked our most dangerous player. I thought he was really going at players. I thought he was being very creative. I do think you're absolutely right, Stu. He has been a little bit safe, and is not trying to take on the players that we see him do at Dortmund. But I think we have seen a little bit of glimpse of that occasionally, and I think he's looked our most dangerous sometimes. And it's just been a bit unfortunate.
You're probably right though, Matt. But you kind of got to look at it another way. The defenders in the Premier League are probably a little bit different to the defenders in the Bundesliga. So you can kind of get him not doing it as much. It might not be the case that he doesn't want to do it. It's just that he can't do it because he's crowded out by 2-3 players around him.
Yeah. It's going to come.
It'll come. I'm absolutely not worried about Sancho. I don't really think anybody is, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah.
Just to go back to the very original point about the midfield, I do think he'll go for McTominay and Fred, and he'll put Bruno in front of him. But the problem is, and going to the Villarreal game the other week, I did notice there was a huge problem. I think it was McTominay that started that game, but solely McTominay. The problem that we have with them sometimes is when the ball's with the defenders, they don't show for the ball, which then means Bruno has to drop deep to do something, which means that there's a big hole in the midfield. The problem with that is it's kind of isolating one whole line of our midfield. If Fred and McTominay start showing for the ball, there's then the further issue of then Bruno's way too far up the pitch, so then there's no one to pass to. So then they either have to go back and play it safe, which has been very repetitive this season and quite boring and quite frustrating to watch.
Yep.
Or Bruno then has to come back and do what Fred and McTominay should have been doing by finding a pass with someone in space. And I don't know whether that is a coaching issue or whether it's just the players just not using their minds. Fred and McTominay need to look at it like the pivot system where one of them drops back and then the other goes forward and then the other one comes back again. They need to start coming into pockets of space on the pitch where they can make a difference. I hate to compare it to it, but when you go back to 20 years ago when Roy Keane and Scholes and Nicky Butt and all that were in, they always wanted the ball. No matter what, they always wanted it. And I seem to be watching the pair of them at the minute. And I don't actually hate Fred, and I don't think he's as bad as a player as a lot of people make out. But his footballing IQ sometimes in his brain just does not match with the fact that he's meant to be a Man United player. And to be honest, McTominay gets away with this a lot. I love McTominay, and I think he gets away with it because he's from our academy. But McTominay's very guilty of that as well. When McTominay wants to play well, he can do. But he's very shy sometimes, I feel, and he needs to start showing for the ball a lot more. Because if you're in Man United's midfield, that is the basis of where effectively we start our attacks. Yeah. Because for some reason, Maguire or Lindelof seems to be our main focal point in midfield at the minute by getting the balls out to people.
That's where Donny would come in better. That's where Donny would come in better. You see, great point. You talk about that, and it's a brilliant point because you talk about a gap in the middle. Donny can fill that space, and he would link up so much better with Fernandes than, as you quite rightly say, a McTominay or a Fred. And you're right. Look, I go on about yesteryear in United, as you well know. I talk about it all the time. I was fortunate enough, Carl, to grow up with Brian Robson. Now, he didn't always have the best players around him, but fuck me, could he make a difference on that pitch? And it's not just his leadership and his sheer presence. It was his mind and how he viewed the game. And so I agree with you. And that's why I think Donny would be a better fit on Wednesday for that reason.
I do agree, actually. I think that this is... like ever, we've been moaning about it for weeks, but this is a big opportunity for Donny to come in and grab it by the scruff of the neck. And I think if we can work out who's going to be that holding man, if that's ever going to happen, and then have Donny and Bruno in front of him, scrap Popper for this game, to be honest, we might see a bit more. Right, with that in mind, I'm going to move on to strikers. Fred, obviously Cristiano Ronaldo, lots to talk about him. Would you drop him? Who would you play as your front three this week?
Would I drop him? Probably not. Will he drop him? I don't think. I think he has to start. Even though Cavani, I think when he came on against Villarreal, that cameo was fantastic, chasing the ball down, closing down, the Villarreal defenders on his own. So I think Ronaldo has to start. Ollie will start him. I think this is a good game for Rashford potentially, especially with his goal. If he can prove his fitness, that is. Depending on who starts left back, if it is Shaw, they've got a good relationship that needs to develop. That's helped Ollie in moments last season. So if we can get Rashford minutes, this could be the game for him. So I would say Rashford on the left. I personally would like to see Sancho on the right. Sancho played. I think he played about 2/3 of his games at Dortmund on the right, and then a third on the left. He scored more on the left, being a right footer on the left, cutting in, but he got more assists on the right. I think if we want to get the best out of Ronaldo's game, we need a proper winger as opposed to an inverted forward. Greenwood, it seems to have a shoot on sight policy under Ollie, whereas Sancho, I think we need someone to go down the byline, get those crosses in. A bit of creativity on the right hand side. Split the defense, spread the defense. I think Sancho and Rashford will probably be our wide forwards going forward in the future. So Rashford, Ronaldo, I would personally like to see Sancho. I think he probably will go for Greenwood, especially after he scored on the weekend. But Ollie has got some decisions to make. Cavani's also there in the reckoning. We've sort of forgotten about him. He's the forgotten man, isn't he? He was so good last season. Would he start? But potentially, but will Ollie put Ronaldo on the left? That brings problems on its own, benefits in attack, deficiencies in defence. I don't know, but I think Ronaldo will definitely start. I would go with Rashford and Sancho, but I think he'll go with Greenwood on the right.
I think you're probably not wrong, actually. I'd like to see Sancho on the right. Whether he does that or not, I think it's another question, as you say. I think it's great to have Rashford back, and I'd love to see that relationship again. And I think actually what everybody was waiting for before Ronaldo arrived was whoever up number 9, Cavani at the time, and then Rashford and Sancho. And I think that those could really interchange from left to right, switching it up very well. So that could be an opportunity. This is just me in dreamland, right? Whether Ollie does that, as you say, is another thing.
Do you know what I would like to see? I would like to see my front six would be... we'll just go with Fred. Let's just go with Fred. I like to see Donny and Bruno in there. And I'd like to see Ronaldo and Rashford and Cavani up top. Now, I'll get slaughtered for this. And you can't play Cavani and you can't play Ronaldo in the same team. Absolute horseshit. Yes, you can. Because when you're defending, you defend in the middle. You defend as a 3. So you're covering the width toss. So Bruno's got to come back. Donny's got to come back. You have Fred in the middle, and then you've got your back 4. So there's your defensive unit. So you don't necessarily have to utilise Ronaldo and Rashford if you don't want to. You'd bring Rashford in to have a 4 in the middle and a 4 at the back. So almost a 4-4-2. And that's what that gives you. That gives you an adjustment, a rapid adjustment. And by playing Ronaldo and Rashford, or Ronaldo and another, let's go with Ronaldo and another, they can intertwine. So Cavani is always your focal point, but Ronaldo can drift to the right, he can drift to the left. And that gives you so much more of a dangerous front 3 than playing Sancho on the right, for example, and Rashford on the left, for example. To have 2 in behind Cavani with a real focal point You've got Cavani's aerial strength. You've got Ronaldo's aerial strength. You've got Ronaldo's ability to ghost in at any post, far or near. You've got Cavani's movement, which is far better than Ronaldo's in the box, because he's like a fucking leopard when he's in the box. And then you've got the ability and the speed of whoever you have in and around.
And leopards good in the box, are they?
Well, I'm talking about speed, aren't they? I'm just talking about speed, lightning speed. He's done. Maybe leopard wasn't the right analogy, but and then you've got whoever you have. So if you have Rashford, for example, or Sancho, you've got speed in and around the two, and it would make a really good balanced attacking team. But I'll get absolutely slaughtered for this. Fucking slaughtered for it. But that's
I don't disagree with you, actually, mate. I don't disagree with you.
It's an option. It's not a bad sort of idea, and maybe he does go with it. He's got to change it up, hasn't he? I think it put a lot of onus on Fred to do the sort of defending on that left hand side.
Professional footballer, though, Fred. That's it. That's his job, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you're in that team to play for Manchester United, your job is here's your box, here is your area. That's where you fucking go. You don't deviate out of there, because if you stay where you are, you can bring in Fernandez and you can bring in Donny. You can dictate where you need these players in and around you to help you. That's what a good CDM does. That's why you should have two talking centre halves, a vocal goalkeeper. I don't know your age, Fred, but Schmeichel was as vocal as it gets. Van der Sar was as vocal as it gets. You need vocality all the way. That's your spine. Your kind of defensive midfielder, your two centre halves, and your goalkeeper. They dictate the whole play, because they can see. They drag your fullbacks in and they push your fullbacks out. They push them up, they pull them back. That's what they should be doing, Fred. Anyway, I mean, just sorry, Cal.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you just said most of it. I think.
Sorry, mate.
It depends on how we want to play, really. If we want to press from the front, then he's going to have to start Cavani. Ronaldo's played nearly a 20-year career and he's never pressed, ever. So we're not going to start telling him to do it now, because he's just not going to. Personally, I think the front three will probably be Rashford, Ronaldo and Sancho. That's what I'd like to see. The problem with the Champions League and Ronaldo is he always scores. You can't kind of drop a player that he's kind of made for the Champions League, so you can't really drop him. So I'd go with that three. It'd be nice to start seeing Cavani, but ultimately I think with the signing of Ronaldo, I think we kind of knew maybe Cavani was going to be a bit more of a bit part player. It wouldn't surprise me if we brought Ronaldo off. Maybe if we're winning 1-2, 3-0, he might bring Ronaldo off and bring on Cavani. But I think we'll probably see Sancho, Rashford and Ronaldo, and then Rashford won't last the full 90 minutes, so you'll probably see like Greenwood or something come on. But that's a front three I'd go with anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a fair one. I think we've all pretty much agreed on that. It'd be nice to see Stu's spearhead attack though for once. We're nice to see it, maybe Cavani and Ronaldo. Listen, boys, thanks very much. Quick one tonight. I appreciate it. I just want to go quickly, very quickly to each one of you and give me your score predictions, please. Fred.
I'm going to go 3-2 United. I think we're going to concede a few. We haven't kept a clean sheet in a very long time. I think we just need to, Ollie needs to operate a score more goals than the opposition policy. So I'll go for 3-2.
Yeah, fair. Cal?
I don't want it to be this, obviously, but I think it'll be 2-2.
Oh, fucking hell, Cal. I wanted a bit more positivity in that. Go on, Stu.
I think we'll sneak it 2-1. We will concede. I agree with the consensus. We will concede. But I think we'll sneak it 2-1.
Yeah, fair. Well, hopefully we do get that win and another 3 points on the board. We definitely need that. Ollie desperately needs that, and so does the team. Listen, I'm going to go with 3-1. I think if the weekend is anything to go by, I really hope that Ollie is holding them all up against the wall and really having a blast at them, and I really hope that they turn things around and have a really cracking game on Wednesday. Listen, thanks everybody for tuning in. Let's hope that the review after the game with me is a happy one and I can finally keep doing reviews. But yeah, listen, thanks for tuning in and we'll see you next time.